Number 133, Daisy Lou Somerville by Karen Bucknall. Daisy Lou Somerville, a picture of honeydew, innocent, green buttercup meadows and a mischievous twinkle of midsummer maiden madness in her sparkling cat-green eyes. With her long brown wavy hippie hair, the emblem of a 1967 flower child. Her basic message was love, peace, happiness and harmony. And spread the love, not the coronavirus. In the current COVID-19 worldwide pandemic that had cruelly taken thousands of lives and left their family and friends grieving. She was thankful to be alive, a butterfly child that refused to have her wings clipped and be trapped. Her sociological imagination a colourful kaleidoscope of flying forever in the moonbeams and lavender of her dreams. Despite having stage 3 advanced bowel cancer and receiving chemotherapy, her bright, bubbly and sparkly as vintage champagne personality would lighten up any room. If the bubbles went up her nose, she would giggle, and her infectious laughter would brighten up the dullest of parties. Daisy stubbornly refused to give up on her social media dreams of being a cancer activist and campaigner. She lived by the rule, cancer does not define me. Being Daisy defines me. She would not be beaten and downtrodden, determined that no one would rain on her LGBTQ parade. D stood for Daisy, and it also stood for diversity and inclusion. She loved wearing her rainbow-coloured, flamboyant hippie chic outfits and taking part in pride events all over the United Kingdom, from Edinburgh to Plymouth, from Norwich to Cardiff. Her philosophy in life was always look for the pot of gold and the leaping flute playing leprechauns at the end of the rainbow, for they would always give you the answers to any problems you have. Number 134, Gerald by Jenny Goodwin. As the mail piled up at the depot and an increasing number of Gerald's fellow postal workers were off sick or isolating because of COVID-19, Gerald volunteered to work longer hours and carry several post bags simultaneously. Gerald's strength complemented his considerable breadth, massive height, long limbs, and size 16 feet. Gerald towered over the people he met on his rounds, and unknowingly had often given toddlers and small elderly persons a fright as they struggled out of his way. However, now the streets were mostly deserted. Unlike his colleagues, who usually held one pack of letters in their hands, Gerald could hold and adjust mail for the next 8 houses between his great splayed fingers and thumbs. Also, when he needed to knock on doors, Gerald kept the necessary 2 meters away by taking one small step backwards. Looking up, a long way up, into Gerald's face, you would see fat, smiling lips, occasionally shaving nicks on his cheeks or chin, plugged with small pieces of green toilet paper, and a forest of curly hair spilling from the nostrils of a wide Roman nose. Gerald also had a pale complexion, skinny eyebrows, sparse, shaven hair, and kindly eyes of soft grey. As lockdown progressed, Gerald noticed that some residents were peering up through their open letterboxes as if expecting a joint of beef to accompany their letters. So Gerald began to leave provisions outside these doors, food for isolated pensioners, sweets and comics for families of bored children, and most importantly, bones for hungry canines. As the lockdown in England eased and absent colleagues returned to work, life became easier for Gerald, but like most heroes, he did not notice the difference he had made to the life of others. God bless you, Gerald. Number 135, Rainbow Boy by Jan Hughes. 2020. Thousands of people died that year. Spring was obliterated. Nobody noticed the bluebells waving their heads in the sunshine, or the vivid green shoots emerging from the oak tree. The world was weary sadness lingered on in the polluted air. The ominous pandemic stealthily swept over England's green and pleasant lands like the first signs of an impending tsunami. Theo Armstrong was busy painting. He lived on the 6th floor of Camden Towers with Mum and Grandad, Tom, a sprightly 73-year-old. Mum was a hard-working care worker employed at Tavistock Grange since Theo was a toddler. Theo hated being off school due to the pandemic. As an only child, he missed his friends, his teachers, and his football practice. Grandad Tom had given him a giant box of poster paints for his 11th birthday. Theo's hero was Banksy. He loved his artwork, the anonymity of the man, and his passion to capture a moment in life at a very poignant time. Theo was a novice artist with a dream. Grandad always encouraged him. Theo liked to paint rainbows, which symbolized joy, hope, and thanks. He remembered the order of colours from the song he learnt at infant school. Carefully he squeezed the colours from the tubes of paint as he swept the colour over the canvas. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue. As he painted, he thought of Mum, the love and care she gave to the elderly as she worked so hard. 2 weeks later, Theo had painted enough rainbows to fill the windows of the whole block. Grandad and Mum felt proud when it extended all over the city and beyond. Rainbows became the national symbol of hope and thanks. In time, the land became green again. New life appeared. Rainbow Boy became nearly as famous as Banksy. Number 136. Velma by Sylvie Lewis. Velma Julian was her name, or at least this was what the signs proclaimed, their paint peeling away in the seaside air. According to the frequent beachgoers, she must have changed her name 3 times at least throughout her life. She was likely in her 40s, though her precise age too was a mystery to most. Another sign outside her dimly lit booth deemed Velma a fortune teller to the stars of TV and radio fame, though no sign could provide evidence regarding which stars she'd actually met. Despite her perpetual look of tiredness, Velma was full of unrelenting life. She often surprised her customers with sudden loud bursts of speech after silent intervals, as though all the world's truths had suddenly struck her and begged to be released. Her cheekbones were angular and her nose beakish. Her low, gravelly voice appeared somehow detached from both her material surroundings and her core being. Her face was powdered white like a silent film star, with thinly plucked eyebrows drawn on in black, sharp pencil. Her cranberry red lipstick buried itself despairingly deep in the cracks of her lips. The unhealthily thin aspect of her body surfaced through her everyday black garments, always long-sleeve shirts and always time-stiffened trousers. In jarring contrast with the pastel beach houses behind her, Velma resembled a spindly, nightmarish shadow as she encroached upon the pier each morning. Once at her booth, she draped her green antique shawl, her only expensive possession, around her shoulders and dashed her tarot cards in a fan across her table. Settling her skeletal, translucent fingers on the crystal ball she had found at a car boot sale long ago in her whimsical 20s, she now prepared to sell sparkling lies for a few pounds each. Number 137, Julian Murchison, by Katharine Shearing. As coronavirus stokes the nation and the future seems uncertain, the good folk of Mereford have counted themselves blessed by the reassuring presence of Julian Murchison. To them, the tall, dark and handsome Julian is as much a hero as the doctors, nurses and carers who daily do battle with the disease. And yet this smiling servant of royal mail would never avail himself of such a lofty appellation. During May's heat wave, his tanned and toned limbs, encased in grey shorts and scarlet polo shirt, were much admired by girls bicycling by on their daily exercise. His appearance is exceedingly youthful, although a woman much given to impertinent questioning ascertained that he is full 47 years old. In early June, as the wind threatened to shake the rook's nest from the trees and rain filled the potholed lanes, he trudged on in battered green hat and mackintosh, still cheerful of countenance. Shortly after lockdown, he announced to those he spotted in their garden or whose doorbell he rang in order to deliver another online purchase that he intended to grow a beard. As the weeks went by and the whiskers became more prominent, some felt he had become even more handsome, while others were horrified that the ginger-grey bristles in no way complemented his luxuriant chestnut brown hair and deep blue eyes. A straw poll resulted in as many in favour of his keeping his facial hair as those who pronounced themselves ready and willing to administer soap and razor. Then one morning he appeared in the village clean-shaven. What had prompted this transformation? He explained that, failing to recognise his new appearance, dogs had howled at him, Farmer Jesty's fowls had clucked and pecked at him, and Mr. Cookson's turkey cock had gobbled fit to burst. Number 138, Selwyn Slimber, by Jean Salkilld. It was not a case of Selwyn Slimber being an exhibitionist. It was not in his disciplined mind to draw attention to himself just to attract admiration for his enviable physique. He was a retired army man, proud of keeping his new recruits in good shape and fit for the defence of the realm, keen to prove that a fit body lived at ease with a fit mind. Selwyn Slimber was determined not to let himself go, and Ivy, his wife, would make sure of that, especially during the coronavirus lockdown, as she trimmed his hair carefully. Every morning, as the village of Penny Fountain was awaking, Selwyn would set off on his bright purple kit and expensive yellow trainers for his early jog. He waved to those he passed, but could never get Alicia Hardwater to respond. Should know better at his age, she would mumble. One morning, Selwyn noticed posters in windows covered with large words. They appeared beside posters of bright rainbows. "Please can we join in your exercises, Mr. Slimber?" It was not planned that Selwyn Slimber should become a valuable asset to the community, but he was its man, ready for action at all times. He had lived a life by rules and regulations, and obeying orders if he wanted to survive. He would happily exercise with all ages and would devise a plan of action for all. At 9 a.m. each morning, he would start warm-up exercises on the village green, to be practiced on their own ground, not forgetting those who wanted gentler movements. This was a time when he was needed. His followers clapped when the sessions ended, and Selwyn noticed one particular curtain twitch. Had the immovable Alicia Hardwater joined in? Number 139, Tommy Taverner, by Christina Westwood. Valiantly pulling pints and half measures, Tommy Taverner is a permanent fixture behind the Red Lion's bar. Tommy also dispenses crisps, relieves shoppers of their heavy bags, pats obedient dogs on the head, and listens, a mild-mannered smile on his face, to his customers' multitudinous woes. With each year behind the bar, Tommy and his pub are becoming more similar still. They are now solid blends of faded cloth, swirly patterns, and old-fashioned charm. Pedestrians passing the unassuming Red Lion, squeezed between two gleaming new apartment blocks, might be forgiven for thinking that they are passing yet another hopelessly outdated suburban pub. They could not be more wrong. To the regulars who usually prop up Tommy's bar and lounge on the uncomfortable chairs, the Red Lion represents an epicentre of daily reinvention. At the end of March, Tommy received government orders to close the Red Lion. What to do? While his regulars retreated into their homes, Tommy got busy, piling all the tables and chairs into the big shed in the euphemistically named beer garden. Next, a peculiar assortment of second-hand fridges appeared that now lined the walls. And so Tommy Taverner has transformed the Red Lion into a makeshift grocery store. Bread and milk, canned fruit, a bottle of rosé, that most coveted item, yeast, all here somewhere. Tommy's rotund and reassuring figure can now be observed daily stacking and restacking the fridges and humming along to the radio, a mobile phone squeezed between shoulder and ear. Idiosyncratic customer selections are left outside the Red Lion's doors and collected by a grateful clientele who drop correct change into a repurposed egg carton. The new system works well, Tommy admits, but questions remain. Who eats avocados? What do you do with 25 kilograms of bread flour? And what is jackfruit? Number 140, Miss Smallbone by Jen Dalmain. Miss Smallbone was indeed small. She had gained height quickly as a young child, stopping abruptly in her 11th year at not quite 5 feet tall and never growing another inch. Throughout her teaching life, every one of her pupils had overshadowed her. Girls of 15 and 16, still with some growing to do themselves, were able to admire the top of her neatly plaited hairstyle as they stood behind her. The girls liked Miss Smallbone, who allowed no nonsense in the classroom and could easily be diverted into telling them exciting tales of her travels abroad, to Greece, to Italy, and to France. But even as they listened, generations of pupils had been fascinated by Miss Smallbone's appearance. Her shoes were small, beautiful brown leather lacing shoes. The fanciful could have imagined that a busy elfin cobbler had crafted them. Her stockings were a thick cobweb grey, and her customary two-piece tweed suits were reminiscent of the bark of trees. A V-shape of some bird's nest egg's pastel colour, silk in summer, wool in winter, showed at her neck between the tweedy jacket collars, offset by one of her many delicate gold brooches. Her hands were small, discreet, clear polish highlighted almost childlike nails, and a tiny gold watch kept lesson time. Though over 60 now, her pleasant face showed only laughter lines, and her hair braided and forming a coronet around her head was still a shiny chestnut. After her day's work, at 5 o'clock precisely, Miss Smallbone would leave by the ornate main school door. She carried a very small handbag, along with a surprisingly large briefcase, which she placed beside her on the front seat of her appropriately small Morris Minor car before setting off for home. Number 141, Miss Socks by Susan Wickham. Along the promenade they rode great heaps of spinning metal, some swift, some quiet, hurtling along others slow and chunky with great effort. Among them, in the early morning clearness of the sky, rode Miss Socks. Everything about Miss Socks was stiff and pink. She always wore a taut pink helmet, which was unforgiving and decidedly pink. Her pink coat was complemented by a rainbow-coloured rucksack in which she kept emergency supplies. Her socks were a lighter pink and stopped 2 inches short from her pink leggings, as if frightened to go the extra distance. The hairs on her legs stood up like soldiers in a golden field. The wheels of the bicycle went round stiffly as her little legs crunched and groaned under the stress. Back and forth she went every morning, silent and solitary. She evaporated into the distance and then came back again, as if she was on a training circuit. It was as if the wheels were twisted the wrong way round, and she pushed and leant forward, trying to make them go faster. Her little shoulders went from side to side, as if encouraging them. She always stopped at a bench and swung round her rucksack and took out a bottle of water. The frosty mist over on the beach hung about as she crunched over the stones. Spotting a plastic bottle on the beach, she made a beeline for it and scrambled back up with her prize. Then she climbed wearily back onto the bicycle seat and rode away into the distance, getting smaller and smaller. Soon she will be heading home towards the bubbling boiled egg. Must be for 6 minutes, constant cups of tepid tea, and the 15 tablets a day. Mother was a rattling, listening, dominant bubble of a person. Number 142, Indigo Jones, by Oda Lisa. Walking along the mostly deserted street, Indigo Jones navigated the craggy sidewalks of Austin, the self-proclaimed musical capital of the world, driven by the excitement of her important purpose. She lugged a tenor saxophone case in her ringless left hand, while utilizing a white cane with her equally unadorned right. Still bright in the late afternoon, as usual in the Texas summertime, black plastic sunglasses made her look cool while shielding her hazel eyes, affectionately referred to as mood eyes by those close to her. When Indigo was happy, the irises turned to dusky blue. When sad, the hue was as grey as thickest fog. And when her 3 sons were growing up and her eyes changed to green, the boys knew that their mother was angered by another of their mischievous antics, and each ran for cover, fleeing in separate directions. The dark shades covered a third of her pale oval face, which lacked much of a chin, but had an ample forehead, sometimes cruelly described as a 5-head. She wore an oversized T-shirt, its swirling paisley design glowing with hot pink, scarlet red, lemon yellow, and a vivid burgundy, which perfectly matched the colouring of her hair that she had recently had done as part of her 58th birthday celebration. Indigo knew that her destination was nearby, thanks to the familiar aromas of charred meat and cumin that enveloped her favourite Mexican restaurant. Closer and closer, she swished her cane back and forth like an enthusiastic metal detectorist in hot pursuit of a credible tip leading to hidden treasures. Finally, detecting the olfactory cues of stale cigarette smoke and spilled beer, she stopped in front of her destination. Before descending the stairwell leading to the basement nightclub, she said a little prayer. Number 143, Miss Julie, by Benita Cullingford. A casual observer may have looked askance at Miss Julie, an atypical character under 5'2" and over 70 years, with the coarsened features of a sea captain. A criss-cross map of a face, she'd weathered many a storm on her allotment and at home with her cranky mother. Her eyes crinkled with blue, understiff, bushy eyebrows, surprised up to a fringe sloping leeward from iron grey hair, cut in a style reminiscent of a medium-sized basin by scissors she wielded herself. Friends, however, loved her for who she was, and Julie was no fool. I inherited a piano. Needing a teacher, a local newsagent's advert conjured up Miss Julie. Post-haste from a phone call, she arrived in a battered old Mini. Ambulance driver in the war. She'd never taken a test. Opening the front door, a pungent smell assailed my nostrils. Fish heads, fusing with salacious tales of government malpractice, emulating from Julie's bundle, wrapped in the news of the world. Saw you had a Tiddles. His name was Oliver. She thrust the sodden bundle at me. Fishmonger's leftovers. Just boil up. My cats love 'em. If you'd like plants, I'll bring some round later. Where's the piano? She sailed in, over long cardigan flapping, Charlie Chaplin trousers overlapping, hobnail boots. Oliver was prized from his basket. I held my breath, expecting scratches. My surprisingly compliant cat purred around her neck, exuding steam-puffing vibrations. She whiffed of fish. After entertaining me with Scott Joplin, we succumbed to the scales, the ivory type. For my second lesson, I visited her. Stepping into Miss Julie's small front room, I was met with pillars of newspapers and multicoloured cats, curled in contentment, enthroned on bundles of clothes. Together on a twosome seat at her old jalopy, we commenced, and so did our friendship. Number 144, Our Chessie by Jeanette Barber. Our Chessie is a picker for your online shopping needs. She's very proud and pleased to be an essential worker in this coronavirus lockdown world. For the first time in her life, it is she who is needed, not she who is needy. She has to be an early bird, Polly parrot, bright plumage, chatty up at the crack of dawn. She dons her working gear. Spiky rainbow-coloured hair, tangerine makeup caked on, thick, dark-rimmed eyes, blue tattered faded ankle grazing jeans, fancy top, low cut, of course. She's only 23. She breaks fast on toast and cereal, Earl Grey tea, shrugs on coat, cool trainers, and leaves. Stocky, stoic, solitary little figure, walking fast in the dawning light, down the long road to Tesco. Self-isolating on the empty, silently eerie avenue, houses one side in sleeping oblivion, mothballed businesses on the other, their owners' dreams shattered by a virus. 4 a.m. she starts. She meets the other busy bees, brushing sleeping pollen from their half-open eyes, hovering over shelves, filling trolleys with Mrs. Snook's honey. Must be lavender, no substitute allowed. Mr. Perkis's tea.